When you were recording, putting out records, maybe you still are, don't you?
No, not at all.
Dismissively. What instrument were you using? Do you have a favorite?
I had my OMs pretty much, and then at one point I started using the early Schoenbergs.
Mm-hmm, yeah, of course. Because we were trying to track this OM phenomenon. And of course, until the 30s, they were all small guitars. Or not, they weren't smaller, they were big. OM was a big guitar, right? Orchestra model.
Fairly big, yeah.
But with the dreadnought, or with something that happened in media, recording movies or something, Gene Autry, whatever, people started playing a dreadnought, and those guitars became obsolete, and a grown person didn't want to play an OM for a while. My first guitar would have been like 60, probably 66, let's say. And there was no choice but a dreadnought.
Right.
I gave you my bad joke, but an OM was considered obsolete, and maybe a retired music teacher, would have something like that. But as a aspiring guitar player, you wouldn't dream of even inherited one. It just had to be a dreadnought, and a 14-fret dreadnought. But maybe my West Coast experience could have been a little bit different. But when we started building, I started building in the early 70s, it never crossed my mind to make anything but a dreadnought.
Right.
But because of my locality, we were getting visited by, Will Ackerman's crowd, Robbie Basho, Daniel Heck, all those guys.
Right.
And because he lived around there, Michael Hedges. And they were playing dreadnoughts, except for Robbie had a crazy Mexican 12-string, playing dreadnoughts. And we wanted to get a sound for that new music that was like an OM, like an OMEQ, but it had to look like a dreadnought. So we didn't make a 14-fret OM until about 82 maybe, at the request of Japan. And you said you guys were doing an OM, or you were working with somebody doing an OM as late as the late 70s?
And actually earlier in the 60s, I
can't beat this guy.
hooked up with Matt Unoff and some guys down in the village.
Mm-hmm.
And he typed a letter to Martin asking for OMs and ordered 6.
Right.
This is in the 60s.
That's because you guys had a historical perspective, and I'm going to say I didn't, from where I was from. I didn't, a 40s or a 1935 D28 would have been something old and used. Why not get a fresh one?
Yeah, a 35 wasn't that old back then.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Actually.
That's right.
My experience was actually, it's interesting that it was this guitar, the very guitar that got me into this stuff, happens to be here. I'll show you. Hired by Marc Silber to work in his shop in the village. And he had this guitar. And it was like the best guitar. It was very exciting for me to get it here because it was Marc and his knowledge and of the old guitars and this guitar. So, and I went out and I bought from George Gruen the 00045 1930 for $700 because no one knew how to straighten a neck.
What year was that?
Early 60s, something like that.
Yeah, that would have been almost twice as much as a new D28 back then.
Right, exactly.
I think I paid $450 for my D28.
Yeah, exactly.
So you guys were kind of in a rarefied, informed atmosphere. I represent what kind of general public, no specific knowledge about Martin's history or the history of the old stuff. And we were trying to think of where did because Martin stopped making OMs at some point.
33.
Mm-hmm. you know, the dreadnought came who needed a
Early
smaller
34,
version.
yeah.
And like I said, Chris was asking me, Chris Martin, if we were having success with selling that. But I didn't know that the Schoenberg soloist predated your work with Dana. That's how Out of Touch I
No,
but
before that it was just us going. We knew knew Chris and stuff, and I just came and asked them to do some custom OMs for the store, for the Music Emporium.
Yeah, uh-huh.
Back in the 70s. Well, Mike, we're mostly connected to Mike Longworth. He just said no. But then I was talking to Chris.
Uh-huh.
And worked it all out and started. We started their custom shop. It says in Mike's book we started the custom shop, getting OMs, and it was a huge success in a way. We kept on ordering them, 5 and 6 at a time.
This again, perspectives are really, really interesting. Mine's more of trying to get information that wasn't readily available, and you were involved in this long-standing tradition of folk and all that. So the first person I was aware of making really an OM, not just a smaller body guitar, was Nick Kukic and Franklin Guitars.
Right.
Was he kind of simultaneous discovery with you guys, or before or
I'm
after?
not sure. I think it might have been
I don't know his roots.
after us. Because, like, I go back to the 60s. I had my 12-fret 0045, but, which was incredible sounding. But I needed more than 12 frets.
Yeah, right.
Right? I remember being in Oberlin, my brothers were at Oberlin, and someone brought in this OM28 that, in retrospect, was very beautiful. For no money, I didn't buy it because I thought the only good Martins were 12 fret. And it wasn't until several years later, playing my guitar and realizing, well, the closest thing, because these are long scale, the closest thing with more frets was an OM.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, so I started getting into switching over for those things.
This is kind of a rabbit hole. I'm sure this was well documented. Like there were, I have a talk I want maybe still do, 14 fret OM, but it was called a triple O from Martin.
In 34, they changed the name to triple O from OM.
Okay.
That's all they did was change the name because they
Just
stopped
confuses.
making the 12 frets. Before they couldn't call the OM a triple O only because they still had this body in their catalogs. I had to do something different. The first OM said 0028 special or 0028 Harry Bechtel, and it said 0028P. I just read this yesterday somewhere. I didn't know that. I did know I had a 29 OM for many years. Mike told me it was the 9th OM, and it wasn't called an OM yet. They had to, so they called.
Did they call it a triple O?
So there were early ones and late ones that were called triple O's. Is that what you're saying?
Right.
Oh, interesting.
They were called 0028 specials and stuff like that. And in 1930, at the end of 33, pretty much, they decided they weren't going to catalog the 12 fret anymore, so they call these triple O again. And a few months later, I don't know exactly when, they decided to lower shorten the scale length. And that's when actually the modern triple O short scale thing started.
I'd heard, part of that, but it was confusing. Like the short scale was called one and the long scale was called the other. So a little confusing and maybe not consistent.
Well, it was up to it. There's a serial number. These guys now, they're so into the history, they get all the little details and they've studied the records, and they'll tell you the serial number of the last long scale.
Oh, this is
triple O.
very cool stuff. So my assumption is as players were getting, let's say, in general more sophisticated, rather than just strumming folk or whatever. And people started getting open tunings and more artistic state, Windham Hill, let's say. That the dreadnought didn't suffice because it was boomy, tubby, and especially old scallop brace ones, and overly bassy, so the EQ wasn't quite appropriate. But that was the popular guitar. So the very first guitar that we designed was meant to have the voice, the EQ, the presence of an OM, but be in the familiar packages of the dreadnought. So Trojan horse, dangerous stuff
Right.
inside. That was really confusing. And then in early 80s, we got a chance to do the OM proper, and we realized there was a tiger by the tail. Martin wasn't doing it, and players were getting a little bit more open-minded, maybe about what they'd play. And I'm going to say that from, at least from our perspective, way out west here, the smaller body just went like that. And by the time Clapton got on MTV with an OM,
12. It was a short scale triple.
oh good, that's good.
39. I've played the guitar.
Yeah,
He sent it to my shop when I was partnered with T.J. Thompson.
yeah.
They sent it to him to work on.
No,
So
that's
I've played
great.
it. It's a 0042 from
Oh,
39.
man. Well, what I was going to say is I believe that was showing the development of a trend. It didn't create a trend itself. That the OM, or I say quotation small bodies because the OM originally was a really big guitar, but that really accelerated that trend. But it was already happening. People were discovering the smaller instrument, better EQ or more even EQ, more versatile, and they can play more sophisticated stuff with it.
And
So
it didn't kill your
that's right,
shoulder.
especially as cotton tops. After playing for 40 years and your arm goes numb.
Right. Exactly.
So that's the lineage that really inspired us. Plus, we got somebody to pay for it. That's always a good motivation.
And when we also ordered custom OM45s from the factory. So
That's a rarefied market, but you have clientele for that.
We started this at the Emporium. We had a friend, Doug Unger, who's an incredible inlay person. So Martin would send us the Peghead so we could put,
Oh yeah.
Doug would put
Uh-huh.
the torch there, and they sent us the fingerboards. When did they start with D45s? Were in the 60s, right? The first when Longworth got him to make.
That was some rarefied thing that was only rumored where I lived. That there was a 45 style dreadnought somewhere
Right,
that we'd never owned.
right.
So I like the contrast in our experience with the OM. What was new to me by the time I got into it was old for you, and we both went in different directions with it. And you're a soloist, and what we did with the OM, because we've never been, good counterfeiters, don't have any interest in that.
Right.
And so both trying to make an OM that was true to the pre-war, which we did our pre-war OM, that was predominant in its bass, and then doing more of an even EQ with it by not doing an advanced X on it, still scalloping it, and we still do that to give people a choice. So the introducing the OM by all of us collectively, it made something happen, and Clapton was a big symptom of that, or a big evidence of that trend going on, because from the early 80s on, the smaller body than the dreadnought not only became accepted, but it finally became the majority of our sales. And we do our H model, which the H comes from Paul Hostetter. That was a tribute to the old Nick Lucas special from Gibson. But
Right there.
oh, cool, yeah.
But that's the 12-fret version.
When we introduced that, nobody would buy a 12 fret, at least among our, and 13 frets, you guys got to be out of your mind.
Right.
And it was dormant as a model for another 20 years, and now it's one of our most popular.
Right.
And so people come a real long ways in their thinking, and I see that reintroduction carefully put, of the OM is a seminal part of that acceptance of, let's say, smaller bodies.
The one time I was at your place back in the old days,
Back in the old days,
way back,
the way you
I
talk.
remember talking with you, and you showed me a guitar with a neck that was 1 13/16.
Yeah,
And I said, wow.
I was
That's
convinced
great.
everybody would come around to
And
that
I've done it
eventually.
ever since.
Yeah, it's a great shape.
One of the first times I met you was one of these things we had some of our Martin Schoenbergs and stuff in, and you said something very nice to me about
Oh, cool.
how much you liked what we were doing.
Yeah, you guys are very
You've been
supportive.
in my favor ever since.
You're all right.